Hey guys, Less is More back with another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at some of the biggest pots I've played in the 500 Zoom pool. So since our shot take at 500 Zoom, it's gone pretty well. 13.1 bigs per 100 over 22,500 hands, so running insanely well. We're I think like a buy-in over all-in EV or something, so that helps as well. But yeah, just on a heater. This is definitely not a sustainable win rate. I suspect my true win rate is somewhere around half of this, if not a bit less. So yeah, can't be too results oriented here, but yeah, definitely winning in this. So yeah, we're just gonna take a look at a few of the biggest hands I played in this pool, and yeah, there's some fun ones, and we'll do some hand breakdown and PIO analysis and those sorts of things. So the first hand we'll start with will be this one. So we open queens for 2 bigs in the hijack. We get 3-bet relatively big. Notice we're 200 big blinds effective. We get 3-bet. We 4-bet to 21 big blinds. So this should be a bigger 4-bet. I'd like closer to 26 or 27 this deep. But nonetheless, we 4-bet. We probably just didn't notice the stack size here, and we get called by the hijack. Flop queen 10-4. We bet small, and then the hijack calls. Turn as an ace, and so I'll just go through the hand, and then I can break the hand down after. So we check imposition bets, we min click, and then imposition just puts the rest of the money in for us. So we raise to 91 bigs, and he has 124 left. Yep, and then he just puts the money in for us. We call, and he has ace queen, so we take down a pretty sizable one there. So yeah, that was a fun one. Yeah, so I ran a PIO sim on this one. Let me pull this up. So here is queen 10-4 hijack versus cutoff 4-bet pot at 100 big blinds. So at 200 big blinds, the ranges and sizes will be somewhat different, but for the sake of the video, we'll go through it at 100 big blinds, at least on the flop. So like on these double Broadway boards, you're just going to be doing a lot of range betting. We just interact so well with this board. We flop strong draws because we should be 4-betting King Jack, King 9, and then we'll have the ace queen and the overpairs pocket queens, that sort of thing. So let's see. Yeah, so a bunch of range betting for a quarter pot size, along with some half pot size mixed in. So when you see this happen, you should just note the hands that are getting mixed into the big size more. Then in game, you don't have to deploy a 2-sizing strategy. You can just take note of which hands tend to favor the big size. So hands like ace king, kings, aces, queens get mixed into the big size more than the rest of the range, along with ace 5. Yeah, and ace queen off especially is the big one, with the vulnerable top pair. So just something to note. So it goes quarter pot call, and then ace of clubs on the turn, and now we should be checking the vast majority of our range. So if you look at the imposition range, after the flop call, it's going to be a bunch of ace queen, some ace king, pocket aces, a bunch of pocket queens, some pocket jacks versus the quarter pot size. Ace. So when we check, imposition's going to bet the pocket queens, ace queen, ace king, pocket aces, pocket tens. We're going to bet all those hands for us, along with imposition having king jack at a pretty high frequency as well. This is just not a, like, it's not that it's not a great card for our range. It's just, like, you can see we still are doing pretty well. It's just, it improves loads of the hands that imposition called with on the flop. Just tons of ace king, or ace queen and ace king. We can take a look at the range explorer. So on this turn, you can see both players have a bunch of nutted hands like the pocket aces and king jack in this configuration. So on this very wet turn, we can just let imposition bet for us. So when we have a hand like pocket queens, we are unblocking a lot of the imposition calls. But if we look at the checkback range, they'll be checking back a decent amount of ace queen and king queen, so we should be, like, even a hand like queens that is just such a good bet, we should still be checking that at a good amount just because we block their checkbacks. And we have several options, like we can raise and manage to get the money in. Yeah, so when we check and we face a bet, we can just put the money in with queens, unblocking their calling range. And when we call the turn, like the imposition player is just gonna check back hands, like ace king and jacks. So, you know, we can just so when we're deeper, they're going to, imposition should be sizing up on the turn, and so they'll just size up with like their ace queen type hands, and then just check back the river on a blank. Because like when you have a hand like ace queen on this board, it's going to be difficult to get called by worse. Like if you jam, if you manage to get 200 big blinds in the middle, you're not getting called by ace king. You're really just getting called by sets and worse two pair, which you block pretty heavily. So it's going to be pretty difficult to get called by worse. Yeah, so at deeper stack depths, you're going to be wanting to, you know, do more checking to check raise with these middling hands. At a deeper stack, I wonder if just like the entire range goes as pure check. But one neat thing you can do in Pio is create a subtree. So I think I mentioned this in a previous video, but what we can do to look at the deep stack scenario here on the turn is just create a subtree configuration. Let me make sure. Yep. So ace of clubs. Yeah. So create subtree configuration, and we can manipulate the stack depths to make it more analogous to the deep stack situation and just add in more sizes. So I'm going to pause the video and do that and come back with some results. So this subtree is just about finished. I'm letting it solve down pretty far, less than 1/20th of a percent exploitability. That's, you know, one of the benefits of the subtree is you can solve it down extremely accurately. So go ahead and stop it there. So this is the results if the if the hand started at 200 big blinds effective and played out exactly as it did so far. I mean, the ranges and the sizes will be somewhat analogous, but it won't be exact, but it'll give us a good overview of the deep stack adjustments here. So here's the overall strategy. So there's going to be, so I didn't have the 10% size here mixed in like as an option on the turn in the full tree, just because of hardware requirements. Tree was going to get pretty big. So the betting frequency does go up a little bit, but you can see like without the 10% size, the overall betting frequency does go down a little bit. So the overall betting frequency is like under 10%. So you would start to check a bit more. But it looks like the overall betting strategy is going to be somewhat similar, and then you just start to bet a bit more with like your straights and your queen jack and king 10 type hands, you know, with blockers to sets and straights. The thing with a board like this is you're gonna have to get a bit creative with your bluffs. You know, you're not, because like if you only bluff flush draws, like, well, like what are you bluffing aside from like these king x and king x of clubs, and like I mean that's pretty much it. Like, can't even think of a hand. Like gonna be pretty difficult. Like 7-6 of clubs, like, you know, it's gonna be difficult to find those natural bluffs. So just something to be aware of. You're gonna have to start to stab with these sorts of hands. Yeah, so again, with a lot of a range, we should just be checking. Then here in position, bets, let's see, 3/4 of the pot. So sizing up, given that we're deeper, with a pretty polar range. So like, even see, like at this stack depth, even ace queen is just, it's not trying to pile money in. What I suspect will happen, yeah, even ace king is just like pure check back. Is ace queen puts in like a big bet and then checks back the river on a blank. So like on a blank, yeah, ace queen is just pure checking back. And then even queens, you know, second set is going to be checking back, just because once you put in a 123 big blind bet, like you're getting called by king jack and sets and ace queen. So it's gonna be, and the ace, like most of the ace king is folding, so it's gonna be pretty difficult to get value from worse, given that most of the calling range is just sets and straights. So yeah, but once so on the turn, once so the deep stack adjustment here is once in position bets, we should just be pure calling the queens, because at 100 big blinds, in position is jamming the ace queen on the river. I have to think about this for a second. Yeah, so in position's jamming ace queen on the river. So when we block ace queen, we should just put the money in ourselves on blocking ace x. Whereas in this situation, we block river checkbacks with the pocket queens, namely ace queen. So we can just check call this one. And on this board, like, pocket queens isn't particularly the nuts, given how strong in position's range is with, I mean, even the two pairs folding, like, you're just getting called by king jack and aces, and, you know, the pocket tens with the club is even indifferent, just because imposition's blocking the king jack, king 10, or the king 10 of clubs. So yeah, sort of an interesting hand there. Okay, we'll do this one next. So we have 10-9 in the small blinds. Button opens 2.5, we 3-bet to 11. Button calls 7-7-5, we 3/4. Button calls, turn 6, and we check. The imposition player bets about 1/3 of the pot, which seems good. And we jam. It calls, river brick, and yeah, turn to boat. So, yeah, so I was sort of curious about this hand. So like when we jam the turn, we're getting called mostly, like we're getting called by tens and pocket 10s and 9s a lot. So blocking those hands obviously is good. Having a gut shot to the nuts is good. Blocking 9-8 is good. And we're going to force a lot of flush draws to fold. Like, I'll save a lot of my assumptions until we get to the Pio Sim, but like, if I'm on the button and I bet like a mediocre flush draw, you're just gonna have to fold when you get jammed on. Like if you have Jack 10 of hearts, you shouldn't be betting Jack 10 of hearts for that exact reason. Like, when you get jammed on, you're just gonna have to fold, which will happen on this board a lot. Like, out of position is just gonna be like jamming their pocket 9s plus. So, you know, it's a pretty shitty situation when you get jammed on. I did run this hand in Pio. Let me pull this up. So here is the out of position strategy, small blind versus button on 7-7-5 rainbow. So I ran a size finder tree prior to this. The optimal size is a mix between half pot and 3/4 pot on this board. On these lower paired boards, the out of position player is going to be implementing a more polar strategy. I will say that a lot of people are playing this board quite incorrectly and doing a bunch of small betting at a high frequency, which is just patently bad. I have a video in the works on why exactly this is bad, because like at this point it just sounds like a blind assertion, and until that video comes out, I guess it will remain that way. But it is definitely bad, especially as the out of position 3-better. In position, you can get away with a lot more in 3-bet pots, especially in the flop, but out of position, it's sort of hairy, because you're gonna have to play later streets out of position. So there's a lot that comes with that. It's a greater responsibility. So yeah. So on this board, half pot and 3/4. 10-9 is mostly betting. Should be noted that a lot of the imposition range is like these middling pocket pairs that call. So we 3/4 imposition calls. So the call range for imposition is going to be gut shots, 7x. Shouldn't be doing much raising on this board except with like some middling pocket pairs and ace-5. That's pretty much the extent of it. Looks like some queen jack with the backdoors sort of starting to do some raising, just because calling with queen high is not ideal. You have close to no showdown value, whereas a hand like king jack and king queen, like it's still king high, but you have more showdown value and you have a stronger pair draw. So if you hit a pair of kings, it's going to be much stronger than hitting a pair of queens, just because you can outdraw more of out of position's hands and not get dominated as often. So yeah, floating with the queen jack isn't great, especially when you have no backdoor straight draw. Okay. 3/4 call. What was the turn? 6 of hearts. Now we should be doing a lot of checking on this turn for obvious reasons. Straights get there. In position we'll have loads of boats and 7x. So if we have a value hand that isn't like this vulnerable overpair, we should just be checking a lot. So yeah, like these 8s through jacks are going to be betting a lot, but like, see, queens plus is just doing a lot of checking. And then you can just check to check raise with those hands. So like check if we face a bet, the queens and kings can just go for a raise, and then you know, the pocket aces, like you see in this situation a lot, is just playing like the rest of its ace high. Like you'd play ace king, ace queen as a check call on the turn here, so you'd play pocket aces the same way to balance that check call range on the turn. Check. Let's see. We face a bet, and so what we decide to do is check jam the turn here. So in the hand we had 10-9 of diamonds, but I had the suits mixed up on this sim, so it's going to be analogous to 10-9 of clubs. You can see 10-9 of clubs unblocking the backdoor floats on the flop is going to check call on the turn, and then raising is quite a mistake. So I mean, it's not a massive mistake, but yeah, definitely a mistake. So the 10-9 of clubs calling on the turn is just, you have 2 overs, and you unblock a lot of the floats that in position floated on the flop, like with all their spade or in diamond backdoor flush draw hands. So when you hit a pair, you're just going to be good more often on the river when they give up. So yep, and then but I just decided to rip, and of course we get called by the 6s, which is fine. But yeah, like a lot of their call range on the turn is going to be 10s and 9s, so that was sort of my intuition about the spot. Not to mention the gut shot to the nuts. Yeah, so it was sort of an interesting hand. You can see 10-9 of hearts with the combo draw and the straight draw to the nuts and 2 overs is just check jamming the turn. But yeah, I figured unblocking all of imposition's floats and 10s and 9s, gut shot to the nuts, it was okay as a check jam, but it's possible that the imposition player is playing too passive on this turn here and not floating nearly enough hand, because like what I see is like they just fold like all of this king high, queen high stuff, even like stuff like 9-8, they just fold it to a big bet, which is pretty crazy. But like I've looked up some hand histories and been surprised before. So yeah, on this turn, so if let's say we have a hand like 10-9 of clubs or any of the 10-9 variety, what happens when we make the straight on the 8? It's like an 8, yeah, just letting imposition put the money in. I'm gonna take a look and see if there's any river donking here. Oh. Yeah, so like on the ace and king, there's gonna be some river donking. But it looks like on the connected card, the connected lower cards, we're just letting imposition bet given how good those cards are for him. Also having hands like 10-8, 10-9 gives us some straight coverage. Like we can have the nuts on several different runouts. And notice on the river here, 10-8's just a pure call after making a pair and blocking 10-9, blocking boats. Yeah, it's just one of your better calls. But you have to defend a pretty wide range here against, what is this, like a, just under a half pot bet. Yeah, so like 10-8, 10-9 are just pure calls. Oh, no, 9-8's a straight. Just kidding. But yeah, notice that the imposition player is jamming 10s and 9s for value. Well, 9s is a straight, but I don't think I've ever seen a jam like this with 10s. I mean, it's probably fine given how much out of position is going to overfold here. But on these 4-liner runouts, you didn't hear it from me, but I would just go fucking crazy because like I have never seen someone call ace king, ace queen, you know, anything that isn't a straight. Like I've never seen that shit. Like if I got called by like 10-8 or ace king here, I would like I'd have to start smoking. Like I don't know. I've just like I've never seen that. So what I'm kind of leaning towards doing right now in the moment is to try and node lock this call off range and sort of see what happens to the imposition range. Some positions jamming like 75% of its range. What I suspect is that imposition will just jam its entire range, but yeah, I'll just pause this real quick, node lock it, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so I just node locked the strategy versus a jam to fold all of its ace high, and then some of the 10-8, all of the king 8, and then yeah, just all of the ace high stuff basically. Set strategy and close, and now we will click go. And I'm going to run this for a second, and then I'll get back to you guys. Okay, so basically, this is the strategy as I expected. So when imposition jams, they're just folding, and this isn't even like pure folding the overpairs. This is folding the overpairs at 50% frequency that it gets here with, namely the aces and kings. Those should mostly be jamming an earlier street, but yeah, out of position, node lock to fold all the ace high is just, yeah, I mean, imposition is just printing. When you see like king jack as a check is winning like 5 to 10, or yeah, like 1/2 to 1 whole big blind. Whereas if you just jam the king jack, it's winning like 58 big blinds, something like that. So yeah, I mean, when out of position overfolds on this board, like your bluffs just start to print money there. What I will say is node locking is a bit of playing with fire, because I'd say the vast majority of people that node lock, you know, will try to do it in a bunch of different spots and make a bunch of assumptions that they aren't really sure about. So I would tread carefully with this tool. It can be useful in a lot of river spots that you think People get there with, a pretty reasonable range, and you just want to see how you should adjust versus someone that maybe bets a few hands too thin, or overfolds to a small bet, or etc. So those sorts of things can be helpful, but yeah, make sure you're studying equilibrium play, because stuff like this will become intuitive when you study the equilibrium play. You can play around with the node locking and try to get a feel for like how drastic the adjustment is if they overfold like by a few combos or whatever. Um, but don't try to play a node locked strategy per se. Um, you'll get a feel for these things over time, as your game develops and as you study more. So try not to put a lot of pressure on yourself to node lock a bunch of uh, spots, especially when you're unsure. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about that. Move on to another hand. So I didn't run sims for any of these. I just have these hands that were somewhat interesting. So here we have ace jack of clubs in the small blind. So making sure I'm recording. Okay, yeah, I'm recording. The button opens to 3 big blinds. I 3-bet to 13. Big blind folds, button calls. A6-2. So the thing on these ace high boards as the out of position player is that we will obviously have a lot of ace-x in our range. This is definitely a favorable board for us. However, in the small blind versus button configuration, in position will have a lot of suited ace-x themselves. They should have, they'll even have a decent amount of 2-pair on this board. I need to, as far as the ace-6 goes, they in position should be 4-betting that. Ace-6 and ace-deuce suited. I forget the frequency though. Let's see. Yeah, so okay, so ace-6 is mostly a 4-better fold, and then ace-deuce versus the right size 3-bet is just a pure fold. I was thinking ace-deuce was 4 bets at a partial frequency, but it looks like it's next to 0. Um, so no 2-pair on this board for imposition, which makes betting at a high frequency a bit more attractive. Especially like if the out of position player's playing 3-bet or fold out of the small blind, that's even better just because they have more 2-pair. But yeah, the ace-6 should be flat out of the small blind at a pretty high frequency. Oh. Ooh. Excuse me. If I recall. So actually, I take that back. Looks like versus a 2.5 open. The ace-6 suited is mostly folded and 3-bet at a small frequency. Looks like the ace-7 and the ace-8 are where you start to flat more. So I was a little bit off there. So yeah, pretty much no 2-pair for either player. So you should be doing a decent amount of betting on this board, given that it's an ace-high board, but you should not be doing anything close to a range bet. You'll see many more range bets on king-high boards, but like on ace-high boards, in position has so much suited ace-x, it's going to drive the out-of-position betting frequency down. So you're looking at like a mid-frequency somewhere around like 45 to 55%, somewhere in there, I would imagine. And you'll have a lot of small bets, and then you can, like on a ragged board like this, you can mix in some big bets like 3/4 or pot with like your ace king. just because you have like that nutted advantage in ace king. In a board like this, it's even better because like imposition can't have two pair. Like the best hand they can have is sets, which is a very small portion of their range. So yeah, you should be putting in at least some big bets with ace king. Yeah, but we go for the quarter pot bet. Position calls. Turn 4. We go pretty big. Notice we're a bit deeper here. Let's see, it was to start the hand. It was, yeah, 170 bigs to start the hand about. So we size up on the turn to about 3/4. Imposition calls. So on this river, so after I size up on the turn, this is going to be a river where imposition is going to have a pretty polar range. So if you think about it, like imposition is going to start to fold some weaker ace-x on the turn. So by the river, the majority of their range is going to be a flush, a missed diamond draw, two pair or sets. That will be the vast majority of the range. And given that we have an ace, it's going to be less likely that they just have, an ace. So like on this run out, they're going to have a pretty polar range. So my intuition tells me we're going to be doing a lot of checking on this card and letting the imposition player do most of the betting, since like the player with the polar range should be the one doing most of the betting. Like if this was like cutoff versus button and it went like check bet call, and this was the river, we're going to take the betting lead. We're going to have a donking frequency on this river, I'd imagine, since we're going to river a somewhat polar range. It's not going to be perfectly polar, given how much one pair type hands we'll have. We'll definitely have a more polar range than on like a brick. So yeah, so we check out a position here on the river, and the imposition player jams. So we just, at this point, we just kind of have to think about the hands we get here with. So given that we're splitting our sizes on the flop, we're going to be putting most of our ace king into the big size. So the strongest hands we'll have in this line are like, ace queen, ace jack, and then we'll play this way with like we'll be checking ace 10 most of the time on the turn, along with ace jack at a non-zero frequency. We'll have two pair as well, like ace 4, but we'll be doing a lot of check jamming, I would imagine, with a hand like that on the turn, in addition to sets. Yeah, the hand like sixes, or, well, we don't really have fours, from pre-flop, but a hand like sixes could, definitely like check jam the turn. So, I mean, pocket sixes would mix the turn, I think. It would do some raising and probably mostly calling, actually. Even though it's a double flush draw board, like we're gonna have some 6x we're gonna want to protect. Well, now that I think about it, I don't think we have any 6x we want to protect. Like, if we had a bunch of hands like 7-6, 8-6, ace-6, then we'd do more check calling on the turn to protect the 6x range. But given that we don't really have any 6x, I think we're just going to be check jamming the turn a lot with the pocket sixes, especially since it's a double flush draw board and we unblock the ace high calls, or the ace x calls, that is. Sort of my intuition about the spot. And then yeah, so this is going to be pretty high up in a range. So at equilibrium, this is just like the pure definition of a bluff catcher. I mean, he's not going to be value betting any worse. And we beat every bluff. So like if he turned a 10 into a bluff, we beat those. So yeah, I would imagine he can have, I mean, he can have a bunch of different, diamond combos. And on this river specifically, I think, so let's say Imposition had a hand like Jack 10, 10 9, 10 8 of diamonds. I think those are bluffs that people are just always going to pull the trigger with. I think people are just going to recognize that, on a scary river like this, out of position is going to be checking a lot of ace-x, and so Imposition's, gonna be able to pull the trigger with the blocker to the top two. Also in this hand, I vividly remember. So okay, I should preface this. Try not to look too much into like live reads or whatever, but I recall vividly in this hand, this was like something I hadn't seen in a long time, which is like the spade came in, took like 4 or 5 seconds, then I checked, and he just like snap jammed, like probably a third or half a second maybe. He just jammed 125 bigs effective. So that was quite strange. My thought process was like, who makes a flush and then snap jams? That was just sort of odd to me. Also, I am block, all the brick diamond draws. I'd hand like ace of clubs, jack of diamonds, obviously not as ideal, or like ace 5 of diamonds, again not ideal blocking, like 6-5 of diamonds. But yeah, I mean, we're towards the top of our range. This is not a mandatory bluff catch at all. It was just a combination of that snap jam was really fucking weird. I unblock like pretty much all of his bluffs here. I mean, the jack of clubs unblocks pretty much all of it. So those factors taken into consideration, I decided to call. And he had the 6-5 of diamonds. So, sometimes I'll be right here, sometimes I'll be wrong. It was just, sometimes it's hard to fold a pair, I mean, I'm a station, what can I say? Let's see. So that was a fun one. So we got a couple more. So we opened 2.2 from the cutoff with pocket twos. The big blind, I'm assuming a fish, 3 bets to a small size. Notice we are a bit deeper here, like 140 bigs, or 150, more or less. So given the small 3 bet size, I decide to call. I would say anything bigger than this, I'm mostly just going to fold this. Like if this 3 bet was 9 big blinds, I just pure fold this. But we are deeper, and it's a pretty small 3 bet. Yeah, so I decided to call. 10-4-2, bottom sets, and he pots into us. So one thing you will see, or I see, is like these small 3 bets, and then post flop on these like low disconnected boards, they just like start piling. This is quite indicative of an overpair. So, I mean, let's just, like, for the sake of argument, assume he has an overpair here. Which is like the most gratuitous assumption I can make. It makes no sense to raise this hand. Like, he's just gonna bet for us on later streets. Like there's some turns he'll slow down like a 10 or some clubs, but usually not. They'll just like keep piling for you. So raising isn't that great. And not to mention that it's a flush draw board, so there's tons of runouts where we're not going to want to pile 150 big blinds into the middle. Yeah, like on these flush draw boards at deeper stack depths, like the Valors of our nutted hands is not going to retain on as many runouts. So we just decide to call here. Obviously, terrible turn for our hand, given that you know, he knows that, like, he's going to slow down with his overpairs a lot. But to our surprise, he keeps betting, so he pots the turn. This is a bit interesting. So obviously, no reason to raise here. It sort of seems like if he has an overpair, he's just kind of going with it. He might give up on the river, might not. But yeah, if we raise, you know, he could find a hero fold and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, just no reason to raise in position here on the turn. And then if he has a 10, like somehow, he'll just put the money in for us on the river. So we call. Turn is the double pairing 4, so not a great card in the sense that the relative strength of our hand goes down against an optimal 3-bet strategy, but this is quite far from that, allegedly. So this is going to be a lot of overpairs and like pretty much just overpairs. So yeah, this is quite a scary card for overpairs. So unsurprisingly, he checks. Now, if you know he has an overpair, we have a pretty obvious value bet. Now, in game, I was considering like a half pot bet, like maybe he would just, you know, get sticky against the half pot bet. But like looking at the board texture, it's a board where there's going to be like the board unblocks tons of flush draws, and like even bad players are aware of this. And on a lot of runouts where the draws brick, even on a scary board like this, they'll just find a bunch of hero calls. When the board unblocks a lot of flush draws that brick. So I just, especially in like this pool specifically, there's sort of this meta where everyone's just like going for it on the river all the time, and people just love to call down late in this pool. So yeah, so I just put in the jam, and he takes about 2 seconds and he calls. And I did not even bother to look at what he had. I just assumed he had aces or kings and sort of just moved on. Obviously, a big pot. It was great to take down. But I went and downloaded the hand off of Ignition later, and he had ace king. So that was not what I was expecting at all, to be honest. Now, if you're in his spot, I don't particularly mind how he played this. Like, aside from the pre-flop size, like Street by Street, his line overall is decent. Like I don't like his call on the river. Like he blocks he blocks a combo of king 10 suited. So there's only one combo of king 10 suited possible, and then there's only one combo of ace 10 suited possible. So like as far as like blocking 10x, he just has the nut combo more or less, but blocking the king high flush draw is not so great. Although like of all the ace king, this is probably the best one given how much 10x you block. So like the check call on the river is not bad particularly. So yeah, sort of an interesting hand. Yeah, I would have just sized up pre, but And then you can check the turn with his hand as well at a decent frequency. But yeah, overall his line was okay. So in this hand, cut off limps. I ISO to 7 big blinds. If you want more information on my playing versus limps strategy, I mean, you can join the Zenith Discord, ask someone there, hire me to coach you. I don't know. Anyhow, folds back around to the cutoff. He calls 10-7-7. We go for the small bets. So the equilibrium size will be a bit bigger, like half pot or so, but in position you can, sort of boost your frequencies with a small size, especially on these drier boards, and no one really plays back at you. So I mean, there's tons of content on like why you can get away with it in position in 3-bet pods, but anyway, we know this is a fish, so it's pretty unlikely he's gonna play back at us with any weak holdings. Yeah, so turn the nuts and yeah, bet pretty big. So moral of the story, we have a really good hand, so we should just bet big. Yeah, I mean, unblocking 10x here, pretty good. And then he, of course, can have 7x. He might raise us with on the turn. I mean, which tend to take more passive lines with even like trips here and just let position kind of bet into them. King River, and we just jam. So like on this river, we're going to be jamming King X for value. So we should play this hand exactly the same. I know jamming King X seems kind of thin, but yeah, I mean, in 3-bet pots, you just kind of have to, grow a pair and just go for it with the top pair. I mean, I'd say like Ace King is the bottom of my value range here in the river. I think like King Queen is just too thin, considering that's something you would want to get called by, like King Queen of Hearts. Yeah, and not to mention he might not 4-bet all of his Ace Kings, so yeah, I'd say just do it with Ace King there on the river. And I don't think we ever found out what he had, but it's sort of an interesting hand. Okay, last hand. I remember this one quite vividly. Small blind versus button 3-bet pots. I have reason to believe this guy in the small blind is a reg. 7-7-4. Bad reg bets a third of the pot or whatever. I mean, this is just bad. This is just bad. However, I was not like I on these low paired boards. I had not studied the correct exploit against the small size. So what my intuition told me was we should be raising a lot against, like, for denial against a bunch of his overcard hands. Just because like I suspect that opposition player is going to be betting for a small size at a very high frequency, which I still think is the case. It's just the correct exploit against that is to float very lightly and then just stab the turn a bunch. Yeah, so you're actually, like, your raise frequency is actually going to go down, which is quite counterintuitive to me. But I suspect at this stack depth, like if you just go bet bad, it's going to be very hard for this player to defend properly after range betting this flop. Not to mention you can just go insanely thin. Like pocket sixes here, if the out of position like range bets for a third of the pot and then you call, like most runouts, you can just go bet jam like on turn and rivers, like for value and still get called by worse, given how wide this player should be on the turn and river. So, moral of the story versus the small bet out of position on these lower boards, especially the paired boards, you should just float pretty light. I mean that goes for most boards in general, but especially these, like you just like shouldn't be raising much. You should just float really light. Like anything that seems like even in the realm of possibilities of float, like king 10 of hearts, like queen 9 of spades, like you just float, and then aggressively stab the turn in position, given how much checking they should be doing on the turn. Like if they get to the turn with their entire range, they should, like their frequency should go way down at equilibrium, because they have so much shit in the range. So yeah, that's sort of the adjustment. However, in game, I was not aware of this, so I just thought, well, he has a bunch of overcards. I have a pair, so maybe raising isn't so bad. Well, and then I get jammed. So that, that sucks, but I figure if he's betting most of his range, which to be fair might not even be a correct assumption. He might just be using like a small size in check or a small and a big size in check. But I suspected he was betting at a pretty high frequency with a size. So when we get jammed on, I figure there are going to be enough 2 overcard hands in his range that we can call this off. Not to mention that I had a pretty good read that he was a reg in sub capacity. So it's not like if we get jammed on here, we're just drawing to a boat or whatever. So yeah, we decided to make the call, and we get a pretty clean run out, and he has the king 10 of diamonds. So put that one down. However, I do not like how I played this hand. I mean, the raise isn't so bad because like it is true that you will deny a lot of equity. It's just that when you raise with a hand like this, he can just jam on you with a bunch of overcards, like even king 10 of spades, like ace king. Yeah, he can just jam on you a bunch, and it's just going to make your life miserable. So yeah, I would not make a habit of this. What you can do is just float light and then ramp up the aggression on later streets. So yeah, that was the last hand, I think. So thank you guys for watching, and if you have any questions, just let me know, and I'll put my Discord information in the description if you want information on coaching or anything like that. Thanks for watching.